Well, greeting, folks. Welcome to Hermit's Rest Hermitage. It's in the evening, and I just spontaneously got to thinking about some stuff that people have asked me recently, as well as actually all my life. Um, share some insights about what it's like to be a wilderness hermit. Um, I've been having difficulties uploading any videos, so we'll see how this goes. If it continues to be a hassle, I'll have to give some thought how far along I want to go with this. I'm here for one reason only, to have fun and to share some insights because we never grow up alone. I mean, I'm a hermit, but hey, I didn't do it all on my own. I've been on the streets ever since I was about 10 years old, and every person I met taught me something. Many. Um, we never do anything really totally alone or on our own. A lot of wisdom out there. A lot of wisdom. People have a lot of wisdom to share. Uh, I was in a foster home when I was about between 5.5 and 8 years old, up in upstate New York and in the country. And it was a great place, great people. And I spent most of my time out in the woods. I'd make a little clearing and sit out there and just think and meditate. And I always thought, hey, you know, this is where I belong. Now, how can I develop a lifestyle in my life where I can live like this and cheaply? I'd build little, shelters out of sticks and think, well, that doesn't cost anything. You could live here, could you? And and I've pursued that for the most part in my life. Some of my other videos tell you about some of the crazy places that I've lived dirt cheap. And I've also joined the establishment and become successful and then gave it up. It was more of a challenge to see if I could become successful. But Lori and I didn't become hermits because we were running away from anything, or really wanted to get away from anything. We were running to something, and that something was simply to be steeped in nature and the solitude in nature, where the mystical winds whisper through the trees wisdom. Um, and so that leads me to, a couple of questions I've got in the past of, what's my philosophy in life? And that just sort of developed over time, uh, from starting with the essence of wanting to be in nature and solitude. Um, Solitude is a big thing, my friend. Very difficult, I guess, to do for most people these days. I mentioned that the first 9 years up at Hermit's Rest I spent in total solitude. I would recommend that anybody, regardless of how old you are, but especially if you're just starting out, don't go to college. I'm going to get a lot of flack for that, maybe. Before you've spent some time alone in solitude. Now, you don't have to do nine, 9 years like I did. Uh, some of the Buddhist sects suggest 3 years. Um, I'd say a good year is a good place to start. But a lot of people are living in the city and they're alone and it's solitude, and you can do that too. Actually, um, the point is spend some time. You got to know who you are before you can accomplish anything in life. And to know who you are, you got to spend some time alone with who you are, absent of any social input that tells you who you are, which is how most of us grew up. Um, and ask yourself some honest questions. I spent 9 years, talking to myself. And I found out that I'd been bullshitting myself for 40 years about certain tragedies that I'd had in my life growing up, kind of a crippled orphan, and how it didn't bother me. Well, yeah, of course it bothers you when you don't have family. Of course it bothers you when you're having difficulties living with certain physical conditions or whatever. And so you got to be honest with yourself. When you're alone with yourself, all of a sudden it's like, hey, Mike, yeah, bullshit. Yeah, of course it would have been nice to have had family, even though there's some advantages to not having family. Um, so a couple of things that I've learned, and it all starts out with solitude, and then over the years I've studied philosophy, and primarily a lot of Eastern philosophy. I got a degree in Doctor of Divinity in esoteric belief systems. Esoteric mean kind of outside of the normal circle, as opposed to exoteric, which is more of a common belief system, common Christianity, be exoteric, that kind of thing. People neglect to realize there was a lot of esoteric Christianity, mystical Christianity. It wasn't just the Eastern mystics. There were Christian mystics, the Desert Fathers of Egypt, for example. And I just really love mysticism because it simply is the mystery, and there is no answer. Okay. Uh, I have a tendency to not want to script these videos, and God only knows, you can tell I'm not a videographer. I'm not here on this channel for to get attention or to make money. I don't follow any YouTube algorithms, and I'm here just to have fun and enjoy myself, and maybe I can share some of the stuff that I've learned. How to live a relatively contented life. And so the first thing I would say is, like a bee seeks nectar from all kinds of different flowers. Seek teachings from everywhere. Okay, don't just stick with one thing, and don't be prejudiced against another thing. Seek teachings from everywhere. It's all there, and the mystical teachers of wisdom in books and all kinds of sources are all out there for the taking. And the biggest thing that you can achieve in life, in my opinion, is one word, and that's understanding. If you can understand things, and I don't mean like how does an internal combustion work, engine work, or any of that, but understand the reasons behind certain things, like, for example, nature, or even the reasons behind why people do what they do. You don't have to be a psychologist or sociologist, but just gain some understanding. One of the things that I've discovered with mass movements of humanity is that I view it in the same light as I do weather, atmospheric weather. I call it human weather. It takes the edge off of being frustrated with some of the silliness that goes on in humanity. You have to realize that human beings are just another species on the planet, and we behave in certain ways. It's the nature of the beast. It's the way human beings are. And so when you see people, I often, you hear so much about people wanting to save the planet. And I think the first step that we ought to learn how to do is save ourselves from each other, and get along, okay? But if you get some understanding, and the reason for that is that don't go through life angry. And the way you can go through life not angry is by understanding stuff. So, I'll give you an example of something that's been happening recently, and that's catastrophic weather. A lot of flooding, volcanoes, earthquakes, tornadoes. And a lot of people will say, well, how can God let that happen, you know? Well, I believe in the mystical force that's omnipresent and all-powerful, and you're not going to understand the workings of the mystical force that keeps everything ticking. It's just beyond our mental capacity. So don't try. I just observe and appreciate it. And the planet has gone through all kinds of changes over the years. And in the Tao Te Ching, it's a beautiful ancient Taoist text, I read something that just was so obviously simple, but it really gave me understanding. And that was the quote, "Heaven and earth are not sentimental. It treats all things like straw dogs." Well, doesn't that only make sense? You know, a windstorm comes in and it doesn't say, oh gosh, that oak tree's been there for 200 years. Why should I bother it? It's not bothering anybody. If it's a strong enough wind, it just knocks it down. And while that may seem like a tragedy, there are benefits probably when this oak tree winds up in the ground and starts decomposing. You know, it could be feeding insects. It could be eventually melting back into the earth. There's phenomenal things. Another thing that I've learned that I think is an interesting thing to think about is that with every seemingly positive event or occurrence, whether it personally is in your life or globally or whatever, or naturally, acts of nature, there's an underlying, potentially negative event or consequence. On the same token, with every seemingly negative occurrence that can happen to you or happen in the world, there's an underlying positive. So when the negative happens, don't dwell on that. That's not the point. The key is to look for the underlying positive. And the same token, when something positive happens, kind of look at the potential negative and be aware of it. There have been some great Eastern adept philosophers, and they all talk basically about one key thing that's the secret to their success in living a happy life. And that is how do you control happenstance? Happenstance, as we all know, it's a wonderful world. My whole life has been a series of happenstance. Is those things that just happen, you know. Destiny and fate fly in on the wings of mystery without the courtesy of an advance notice. And as a result, lives are scattered across the plains of existence like seeds in the wind. And if you can understand happenstance and the negative and the positive events or circumstances that might happen, or the disappointments or whatever, and learn to sidestep them, learn to weave in between those events, you can wind up controlling present realities. I remember the first time I read that in some ancient Buddhist philosophy. Do this, do that, do this, do that, and then control present realities. Holy cow. Really? We can control present realities? Well, in a lot of ways we can. Another one that I've always liked that blew my mind when I first read it was gain all the wisdom that you can and then go out and live free like a lion, completely free of all fear. Holy cow, when I read that, blew my mind. Because I grew up like a lot of us do, afraid. Afraid of all kinds of things, afraid of starving more than I already was. All kinds of things that we can be afraid of, aside from the government and regulations and rules and that kind of thing. So live free of all fear. And golly, whatever you do, don't go through life angry. We've all seen those individuals that do. And the reason for that is because some people just hate to hate. They just have to have something to hate. And they're not happy leaving their hatred to themselves. They want to share it with you. But they have to hate. There are some people that just have to be at war with each other. Been going on for eons. Some people just have to, be at war and destroy other people. And that to me is a lack of understanding. There's no way to go through life. Take it easy. Bye-bye.